Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for the invitation to come and present today. I hope this is useful to you. I think the headline is from Synod Property Services. Please pick up the phone and give us a call if you've got any questions. We're really keen to work with you. Property is a contentious space. It is quite a regulated space, and hopefully we're able to assist you in navigating through what property can bring forth in our conversations. Is there a clicker, or do I say... Here it comes. Oh, there's a lot of slides. Hopefully the text is not too small. Oh, well done. Just the big one? Fantastic. At Synod Property Services, we offer a range of technical assistance, sales and purchase of property, leasing, building projects, land divisions, manses, compliance, workplace health and safety, and heritage. We're a team of 2.8 full-time, and so we cover a really wide range of property matters. These stats are a couple of years old, but they're still pretty close. So across the Synod, which is the state, we've got 264 congregations. It's a little less now. In 500 buildings. It depends how you define what a building is. Some of our buildings were 3 buildings that are now joined, and are they 1 or 3 buildings? So we always use approximations. So there's about 500 buildings. Most of them are churches, halls, manses or offices. We've got 21 state heritage sites, which is a whole extra level of work. 84% of our buildings are more than 50 years old, and 40% of our buildings are more than 100 years old. So our building stock is old, and old buildings come with extra issues. The main headline I like to communicate is that property is a means to an end, not an end in itself. Property can open or close the door to mission or ministry, but property is not the end game. And I'm the property guy. I'd rather have 200 congregations that are on fire for God and doing great things in the community with no property than 200 congregations who are really stifled by property because of the minimums that we have to do just to keep our doors open. So we always say that property needs to follow mission. So we really encourage congregations to have a strong mission statement before they decide what they're doing with their property. Does the use of their property support their mission or not? Is your worship space flexible? Does it provide for community outreach? Or is it a single-use space that's costing a lot of money? In terms of building compliance and maintenance, there's a lot of regulations around this that are changing all the time. There's workplace health and safety, there's disability access, there's building codes and standards, there's maintenance and budgeting. There's a lot of technical things to get your heads around, to get our heads around in relation to buildings. But again, I'm not going to go through them here because there's a lot of information to share right now. But if you've got questions, please give us a call, and we're happy to come and meet with you, have a conversation, try and assist where we can. A few years ago, the Property Review Project was undertaken, and we visited every church building across the state, and we discovered that across the state there was $31 million of works to get our buildings to minimum standards. And that was now 4 years ago. We suspect building costs have gone up dramatically. In a lot of trades, it's been 50%. So that could be closer to $40 or $45 million. Having said that, a lot of congregations have done a lot of work on what was identified. So at that stage, only 6% of our buildings got a pass mark. So 94% of our buildings were not meeting standards one way or the other. Every congregation received a tailored report for their property, and we've sought updates from congregations as to how they're tracking against those projects in 2021 and 2023. As at September this year, 45 Wimmera congregations still had not responded. That's pretty similar to other presbyteries as well. That's not having a go, that's just the facts, is that we suspect there's a lot of people ignoring the advice that's being provided to them. So the building and projects. We really want congregations to be mission-driven, not building-driven. We want to take a long-term view. We are all beneficiaries of the generations that have gone before us. I say often at committee meetings that I don't think there's a congregation within the state that it could afford to build their property now if they were starting from nothing. We are all beneficiaries of what's gone before us. Professional advice is critical but expensive. Budgeting is really hard. Consultation with members can be really difficult. Do you choose to maintain your building, or do you choose to keep your pastor full-time? That's a really hard discussion. There's an approval process in place through Synod and also statutory approvals, but there is support available, as I've said. A lot of things have changed in the life of our buildings. 135 years ago, buildings might have looked like the one at the top there. 35 years ago, they might look like the one down the bottom. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that safety and compliance would affect ministry and mission? You know, when our first buildings were built, a lot of them didn't have running water. A lot of them didn't have electricity. No heating, no cooling, no car parking. Things have changed a lot. Who would have thought that churches would be workplaces, or that cleaning the gutters would require a risk assessment, or that changing a light globe may require specialised equipment? Who would have thought that complying with legislation such as OHS&W regulations, disability access to premises, building codes and standards, who would have thought that would require a separate line in church maintenance budgets? Who would have thought that we need to manage asbestos? That's quite a costly process now. There's been so many changes in church property. We've gone from a few graves in the corner to providing for a formal cemetery to now, if we built a new church, we wouldn't provide any land for a cemetery. So what was an afterthought, where are we going to bury people, to a central mission of a congregation to not a mission at all of the congregation. It's changed. We've changed from a church being enough to now needing to have a church and hall, to now needing a church and a hall and a kitchen and toilets and car parking and sporting clubs and multi-purpose complexes, and then linking the church and hall, because we couldn't walk between buildings without a roof over our head, to full worship complexes. But it's not just church property that's changed. Across society, the way we run things has changed. We've gone from local shops on the corner to centralised shopping centres. We used to walk to church or ride a horse to work, a horse to church. Now most people drive to church. Music, fashion, food, cars, homes, work, and the way we live our lives have all changed. So we need to view our church property in a context of change. So please engage with us. It's a changing landscape. We're available on the phone. We'll come and visit with you. You can come to us in the Synod office if you'd like. We've got information on the website. There's a whole bunch of processes that we can walk you through. We've got workshops that we can run. We're happy to meet with church councils and congregations. We work really closely with the Presbytery team because property is often so interlinked with mission. We want to make sure that the mission is right before we make property decisions. So we work a lot with Presbytery in that space. Presbytery are represented on the Synod Property Committee when big decisions do come through. So Ken Callahan a few years ago identified a number of factors for our properties that really need to be thought about in terms of making our properties work as churches. So perhaps as we go through these, think about your own church and how you might score yourselves in terms of your signage. Is your signage fresh? Is it fading? Does it have a current mobile phone number on it? Does it have current service times on it? Is your property high visibility? Do people know where it is? Now, you can't move your property, but is there signage to your property? Is your property open and accessible? Could wheelchair users get in? Could elderly people get in? Could mums with prams get in? Is there enough parking? Is the land and the landscaping well kept? Or is it a bit shabby? Is there adequate space and facilities? The next slide is a picture of a front door of one of our churches. Simply opening both doors is a much more welcoming statement than just opening one. How do you open your doors on a Sunday? What does your property look like when people get inside? Is this a club that they're not really welcome in? Is there enough information that they can actually find what they need to find? So in terms of ownership of land, one of the questions we often get is, if Synod owns the property, how come Synod doesn't pay for all of the repairs? So the first half is correct. I mean, it's all correct, but all the property is vested in the Uniting Church in Australia Property Trust on behalf of all Uniting Church members, congregations, Presbytery, Synod and Uniting Church bodies. So each congregation the technical term is a custodial user, but you might have heard of it as being named as a beneficial user. And so all of the properties were centralised into a single trust at Union. So each congregation with beneficial use, they don't pay any rent for any of the properties, but they do pay for all the expenses. As I said before, I don't think there's a congregation that could afford to build their own property now. There's probably not a congregation who could afford to rent their own property now at market rates either. So it's not a landlord-tenant relationship, it's a unique relationship. What it means is that any legal arrangements, any legal documentation that are entered into need to be in the name of the property trust, because the property trust is the legal entity of the Uniting Church. So again, if you're in doubt, please give us a call. So our role at Property Services is to serve congregations and the presbyteries and the Synod of SA, so congregations can move forward in mission. That's our core business, is to be on mission for God. We're building the mission. Bricks and mortar are not the mission. Our mission should not be to keep the doors open. Our mission should be God's church in the world. Property is a means to an end, not an end in itself. It can open or close the door to mission and ministry. So that's our website. There's an email address there if you want to note it down, property@sa.uca.org.au. Please get in touch if you've got any property queries, no matter how small or how big or whatever you're thinking. Early engagement is often useful later on. So that's it.